Hi. Thanks for coming back. Tonight, I'm wearing my worst wig. Usually I wear it backwards, but for you, I'm wearing it the right way around. I might have had an extra W in there somewhere. Welcome back to Have I Told You the One About? Lost at 3, except I realized I couldn't have been 3. So it's actually now called Being Lost at 4. Oh, the glitch. Oh, the glitch. Yesterday it came early and then it didn't come again. I've been doing research. You think that I don't know something, but I've decided I'm going to get a cable because, why do a low end show when you could have like basic technology? What are we living in the 21st century in a pandemic for? Being lost at 4. So this happened in Kingston, Ontario. All my family, my immediate family, all lived in Kemptville, Ontario, which is a tiny little town I talked about. And we lived in Cornwall. My family lived in Cornwall. And Kingston was an hour and a half up the 401. Is that right? An hour and a half. Yeah, an hour and a half up the 401. So it wasn't that far, but an hour and a half for us. We lived an hour away from the rest of our family, and everybody thought it was really far. So an hour and a half was even farther than far. Grandfather had 2 main brothers that we hung out with, Finley and Keith. Everybody talked about them all the time. They always talked about them as Finley and Keith because they were both real funny characters. He worked for the Kingston Police. One worked for the Kingston Police. One worked for the OPP. Oh, this glitch. I'm just making it my lover. So it was in their backyard, and all of my dad had 4 brothers. I think all the brothers were there. All 4 boys were together, and a whole bunch of all the kids, like the great uncles. We never saw them. I didn't have a lot of contact with my family because we lived farther away, and so this was a very rare occasion where my grandfather. Other than funerals, I don't think I was ever in the same room with all those people any other time in my life, except for this family reunion. Houses. They'd been boys together, and they both had a habit of talking in their sleep. And their wives would say that when they visited each other, they would talk in their sleep to each other across the hall. They would carry on conversations back and forth, both of them sleeping and talking to each other. They were very funny people. They were police officers, and regardless of what you think of police officers, some of you like them and some of you don't, and that is a very good determinant of the color of your skin. But they were really funny and they liked to make pranks. Mom told me this story about Finley walking out of the bathroom with toilet paper hanging off his body and pretending he was having spasms. She thought that was really funny. It is kind of funny. Maybe you have to see it. It's probably a visual gag. It sounds like he's a bit of an ass, but it was a different time in the world. So at this party, I had a whole bunch of distant cousins. So Keith had 2 daughters, and I don't actually know who the person was, but there was a young girl who was maybe 6 months older than me. She was probably 5, who was a blonde. So it was probably Keith's daughter or granddaughter, who was there as well. But we decided we were getting along really great. We were having fun, 2 kids hanging out, and we decided we were going to go for a walk in the city where I didn't live. Oh yeah, it must have been hit because she knew the city. Like she was in her own city. And so we just walked and talked and walked and talked and walked and talked. 2 young kids walking down the street at 8 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night, something like that. And we probably walked for an hour, maybe more. And I remember talking to her and having a great time. Like I kept thinking, wow, this person is so great and easy. Oh my God. We crested over a tiny little hill. And as we came over the hill, there were like these lights off in the distance, and we sort of saw the end of the city. And we both kind of stopped when we saw the view, and we looked at each other and we said, well, we better go back, right? Oh yeah, how long have we been walking and talking? We've been out here a long time. We should go back. And we turned around. And I remember the minute we turned around, we both paused. So that was really terrifying. I remember my body just sort of got really hot, and I thought, "Okay, well, we're just gonna walk, and then we'll find the way back." "I think we went in a straight line," I said. And she was like, "Yeah, I think so too." So we turned around, remember a lot of details about what happened, and so I thought, "Well, I'm gonna call my mom today." I thought, "I'll call my mom and I'll ask her, like, am I right about who I think, rescued us in the end?" And, like, obviously, I'm fine, I'm alive. And just whatever details, like, what was it like while I was gone for 2.5 hours? And she said, "Oh, I don't remember you getting lost." And I was like, "Yes." And then I reminded her, and she went, "Oh, why do you wanna tell me about, like, make me remember bad stuff? Like, geez, can't you make me remember nice things?" And I said, "Mom, fun stories, like, they're just, well, they're not as dramatic. They're not as interesting." And she was like, "Oh, these are such bad memories." And then she proceeded to tell me about all of the bad memories. And I said, "Well, I used to be quite accident prone. Like, I, I got in all kinds of trouble when before I was 3." She was like, "Oh yeah, like the time you hit on me in the Woolco." Woolco was sort of like the Walmart of the past, or the Sears, or the Zellers. "You hit on me in the Woolco." Woolco had these racks where they had merchandise, but then down below it was the 70s, so they had these boxy cupboards, and you could just slide the cupboard out, and there was more product there if you wanted it. They didn't have a big back storage area, I guess. And so I slid the thing open because I knew it moved, and I climbed in and I closed it, and she went all over the store looking for me, terrified. She said, "One minute you were there, and the next minute you were gone." And I was losing my mind. And you just crawled out from underneath Anyways, that was terrible. And then she said, "Oh, no, no, no. You didn't split the back of your head open there. You split the back of your head open at your grandparents' place in Kempville. You were rocking on a chair there and you fell backwards and you cut your head open. And I brought you, it stopped raining. You guys can go to the playground if you want." There was a playground in the campground. So we were with friends and we went on this playground, and it had one of those um, climbing apparatuses that was like a dome. But it was just 4 ladders that made a dome, and you could climb up the ladder. And then there were these 3 big rungs, and you climb down the rungs in the middle. And so I climbed up the ladder. I followed. There was another girl playing with us. It was somebody's friend, my parents' friend's kid. And she climbed up the ladder and climbed down, and I climbed up the ladder behind her, and I went to climb down, and I slipped because the handlebars were wet. And I slipped on the bars and I hit my head, bang, bang, bang. I hit all 3 rungs on my way down. And I remember it. And I was only about 3 years old. And there was a lot of blood. Not as much blood as in Kempville, and the gash wasn't as big because it had healed some. I just opened the gash that was already there, and they drove us to the hospital, and we drove a long time because we were far away from home, but we weren't going to the Kempville hospital again. We went home to the Cornwall hospital, and I got stitches. I remember getting stitches. I got 3 stitches. My mom was like, 3 stitches? Who knows how many stitches you would have had the first time? And there was blood everywhere that time too. So that's 3 trying to get it to stop. And she had to rush me to the hospital. And they were having a party, and my dad stayed there and entertained the guests, and the party continued while my mom went to the hospital with me, which tells you a lot about what my family dynamic was like. But, you only get one dad, make the best of them. And I also got bit. I have a scar I could show you, but I have a scar right here. I got bit when I was about 3 because I bit me. He was a really nice dog. He just didn't want to share his food. And I was 3. So it used to be this great big gash on my arm. But as I grew, it became just this tiny little thing. It's like the diameter of my fingernail. And another time I was at a campsite. A lot of things happened while I was camping. I was very accident prone. This is all before the age of 3. Another time I was at the campsite, and there was this hill that all the trees had been shaved, but there was forest all the way around it. It was sort of like in a horror movie. Like I stood at the bottom of this it was probably not a very big hill, but I was 3, so it seemed big. And at the top of the hill was this cat. And the cat came walking down the middle of this hill in this shaved part with the forest on either side. And I remember walking up to it. It was a Siamese cat. It had blue eyes with that Siamese eye stripe in the middle, the weird cat's eye stripe, dark stripe, blue eyes. And it was sort of a tan color with black, those, dark chocolate brown paws. And I went walking up to the cat and it freaked out on me. And my mom says, she's told me this my whole life, my entire body was covered in scratches. And I reminded her of it. I went, oh yeah, like the time with the cat. We were just trading notes on terrible things that had happened. And she said, oh yeah, that time with that cat. Oh, that was terrible. Oh, you didn't have an inch on your body that didn't have a scratch on it. Oh, that was awful. That was a bad one, she said. And okay, this is the last one. Also, when I was 3, I think it was the same campground. It wasn't the same camping trip, but I think it was the same campground. My parents were camping with friends of theirs again, and I was 3, and their kid was probably 5 or 6. And we were playing chase, and I was chasing him around and yelling and screaming. And he came around the fire pit and jumped over it. And so I went after him and jumped over, but I tripped on the rocks because I wasn't old enough or big enough. And I landed hand first in the fire pit. And there wasn't a fire going, but the briquettes from supper were in the fire pit. Somebody had dropped the briquettes in there. And I landed hands first on the briquettes. I remember all of this. I don't remember landing, but I remember chasing, and I remember jumping, and I remember tripping and thinking, uh-oh. And I remember my mother picking me up. I don't remember the moment of my hands plunging into the fire pit of briquettes. But to this day, I can't handle heat on my hands. When I wash dishes, I always have to have the water sort of lukewarm, like it can't be that hot, because from the burn that you couldn't see my fingers. It was just a big, fat, puffy, both of them. I could have been a professional thief. Too bad it didn't burn my fingertips off. All that for nothing. And she said she couldn't stand my screaming because I screamed, it was so traumatic for her. She brought me to my grandmother's house, and my grandmother, when she heard what happened, put Vaseline on my hands and plastic bags around them. So who knows? I don't know. Maybe she made it worse. Anyways, my mom also, this is the last detail that I'm giving you for context. My mom also told me whenever I was growing up, when I was first born, I have all kinds of weird memories. Like I remember being in the playpen, and I told her all these memories I had. She goes, well, those are all memories before you were 3. I had like 24 of them just off the top of my head. 24 memories before the age of 3, because we moved into this other house when I turned 3. So we knew that all those memories were from then. And she said that you didn't talk for the longest time, and we thought there was something wrong with you because you wouldn't speak. You understood things, but we thought you might have been mute or something. We were really worried. And then all of a sudden, you started speaking in sentences. You waited until you'd figured it out. And she always she'd tell me that story, and then she'd always say, and when you started, then you never shut up. And I remember growing up, she used to say, like, Mick, she called me Mick, Mick, would you shut up? Were you vaccinated with a gramophone needle? I must have heard that 1,000 times. I was a talker. So walking for an hour and a half in a strange city with a cousin that you just met when you're 4 years old and talking the whole time was kind of easy for me. It was easy to get distracted. I'm really glad you're here so I can do more of the same. So I remember we walked for quite a long time on our way back, and we were clearly lost. We didn't know where we were going. At one point, nothing looked familiar. We didn't recognize anything. We didn't know what we were going to do. And we turned down this street. We thought, I think one of us recognized the street, like recognized the garden that was in the corner or something. Oh yeah, I think we recognized the person working in the garden. And she looked at us and we looked at her, and she said, are you kids okay? She didn't recognize us from the neighborhood. And like an hour had passed since we'd gone in one direction. And we said, yeah, but maybe we're lost. And she was like, oh, and she came over and she didn't cross the fence. She talked to us from the other side of the fence. And she asked us questions like, what's your name? Where do you live? Why are you here? You know, how did you end up on this walk? And we told her the whole story. We were at this party, la, la, la. We went for a walk. We didn't know how to get back. She wanted to know whose house it was. We didn't know whose house it was. She wanted to know who our family was, like what was our family name. And I was a Smith and she was a Smith. We're Smiths. Smiths in the phone book in a city of 200,000 people. Is that how big Kingston is? I don't know. Enough people. Smith. Phone, or were you? We could just try the Smiths until we find one. And my distant cousin who was with me, she was like, oh, I don't think that's a good idea. And I talked to her. I was like, oh, you sure? You sure it's not a good idea? Like, what are our options? Though I don't think I said options. But like, you know, what else do we do? And she was like, it's a stranger. We're not supposed to go see strangers. And they're like, okay, no, we're going to keep walking. We think we're probably only like 7. They seemed really old to me, but they weren't that big. So they must have been 7 or 8 years old. These neighborhood kids, they're hanging out without their shirts on and, you know, ice cream around their faces. And they were kind of bullying us. Like we walked up to them and we went to go around them. They're like, where are you going? Who are you? What are you doing on my street? And I remember us being like, ugh, but they let us alone. And we walked another, I don't know, maybe another 5 minutes or something. And all of a sudden and sure enough, there was my aunt. It was Larry and Elaine. It was my Aunt Elaine. And they saw us from a distance and pulled over, and we got in the car and they drove us home and we were safe and sound. And I remember arriving at the party and thinking, okay, I am in some serious shit. I'm in deep trouble. I ran away from home. And now I'm back. And I remember when my mom saw me, she came running up to me and gave me a hug. And she was like hysterical in tears. She was like, oh my God, I'm so glad you're safe. I'm so glad you're okay. And I was really relieved. I thought, okay, she's not going to spank me. And that is the story of how I was lost at 4. Okay, well, there you go. I have to tell you that, you know what I want to do? Well, here's what you can do. You could send me a selfie. I give you time to take a selfie every screening. You can send it, you can email me. You find my contact information at michaelvsmith.com, or you can tweet it out to me. And this is my new thing. I'm just showing this to people. I'm showing the pictures that I get. I got new photos. This is my sweetheart friend, John Brannon, and he said he's going to help me with my internet problem. He just sent me a text. But look, he sent me a photo. It's hard to see my face in there. Oh, that's better. Oh, that's so sweet. And here is my friend's alarm. He sent me this picture, and I'm just taking what I can get. Here's his alarm. Look, it says Cookie. That's my Radical Fairy name. He sets his alarm so he can always watch. Oh, well, that's so sweet. And here's this guy that I went to high school with, and I have barely talked to him in my entire adult life, but he sent me a note about one of my stories, and we had a really nice correspondence. And it was kind of amazing, and it was nice to think, oh, there's Derek. Isn't he handsome? He was always handsome in high school. Everybody was crazy about him. He was a sweet person. He was one of the people who was nice to me in high school. And this is my friend's meal, and there I'm on the screen. Oh, can you see it? Oh, there I am. There. That's it's not a selfie, it's just dinner. But you know, as you're on your climb up to being a YouTube on your climb up to being a YouTube star, you take what you can get. Clearly, I've got some practice to do. Anyways, you could send me a selfie and I'll give you a little shout out if you want. If you don't want me to say your name, you should tell me. Okay, so it's time for the magic story bag. I always look inside, but I know the cards are in there because I haven't moved them. I think little elves are going to come in and steal my cards. Okay, I'm mixing it around. See? What's the story for tomorrow? Oh, I love this story. Tomorrow's story is The Oil Thieves. Ooh, that's a good story. I'm the hero of this story, but maybe I shouldn't tell you that. Forget I told you. So you should or could, if you would like, it'd be great if you like my page or like the story, shared a video that you like. I don't really care about new people now. I'm just talking to my friends. I've realized I'm never going to be a YouTube star. I'm always going to be just that weirdo in a wig who's talking to you live on the camera because there's nobody at home who'll listen to him. And that's good enough for me. And subscribe if you want to get, if you want whatever subscription does for you. And this is my favorite. Don't forget, you could click the notification bell and it'll tell you when things are happening. Okay, we're at selfie time. Are you ready? I'm going to click down here. And then I click over here. I love you all. Continue to wash your hands. I love that you're here hanging out with me. You're saving my life. This is gold.